welcome everyone to this exciting event. We're so happy to have such a great group of folks. We're up to 70 participants right now and climbing. We had 140 plus register for the event. And we're very excited to bring this event on actually Human Rights Day, December 10th. And it's, as you can see, a collaboration of several key groups that have worked together to put this on. It's been the Nations County and the San Diego chapters, along with the Southern California Secular Coalition. This is a group of a combination of secular groups throughout Southern California that have been organizing over the last several years to try and promote human rights, to try and mobilize and make a statement for all of the good humanistic values that I know that are so much in line with human rights. So we're very excited to host the event. We believe that Human Rights Day should be a national holiday, don't you? And it just makes sense. It's such a core remembrance of the values that drive all of us. And what I'm so reminded of is that in this day and age, especially of divisiveness, when we have friends and family that might be on the opposite sides politically and so forth, it always seems that if you can come back to human rights as a baseline, that you have a standard of having a discussion moving forward. And if everybody can agree that, yep, human rights make sense, we shouldn't be having discrimination, then we can, it's a good standard for discussion moving forward. So we have a packed program tonight, and we've got several terrific speakers. We've got some music and entertainment. We are gonna go until 7:30. And then at the end of 7:30, for anybody that still wants to had some questions that they weren't able to ask any of the speakers, or if you want to hang around for some more chat and discussion, we encourage you to do that. And in the meantime, definitely feel free to put questions that you might have for folks into the chat. We have a fairly good sized group of folks that are helping host this event tonight. And so if you have any issues, send a note to either Jeremy Cohen, Rhett Koseski, Bev Zarnow, Judy Flattery, and they'll be able to help you. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is just have Bettina Hausman, who is the president of the United Nations Association of San Diego, just say a few words of welcome, and followed by Isabel Treadle, who's the president of the United Nations Association of Orange County. And then I'll come back with just a little intro on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, followed by a really cool video that we have that lays out the UDHR. So Bettina, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dave. And it's been really a pleasure of working together with all of our partners for preparing this incredible day today. And as Dave said, this is really a year that has been celebrated every year for decades now. And this year has been a unique and challenging year for all of us collectively. The world of, or in the words of the former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, his word could not have been any more poignant and more timely. And I quote, "It is my aspiration that health finally will be seen not as a blessing to be wished for, but as a human right to be fought for." As current UN Secretary Guterres mentioned today, he called up in the world and its leader to put human rights front and center in the global response to COVID-19 pandemic. But in that regard, let us not forget who is really at the very epicenter of this matter. It's us, you, me, she, he, they, them, we humans. So awareness is a precondition to action. And given that, it's really that our human rights cannot be respected defended or claimed for if we don't even know what they are? So it is incredibly crucial to know what are these human rights, to know these are not necessary in legislation embedded in countries. It is that we all have these rights no matter where we live, no matter in what country, what color. These are inherent in us as human beings. So this awareness as precondition to action is really crucial. Human rights should be completely non-negotiable. And only will these be non-negotiable when we ourselves make it so. In that regard, happy International Human Rights Day. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you guys for participating today to this special. As they've mentioned it, I am Isabel Tridel. I am currently the president of the United Nations Association in Orange County chapter. And as you can tell from my accent, I am a foreign person. I was born and raised in Colombia, and I was born and raised in a time where things were really complex. I lived the period of Pablo Escobar. I have to witness a lot of kidnapping in my family members, my friends. I have lost family members and friends due to violation of human rights. Today, I feel really humble and lucky to be in this country. And I have different opportunities that a lot of my brothers and sisters in my country, they don't have the opportunity. So today I want to reflect with everyone everywhere that they don't have the opportunity to speak up and their human rights are being violated just because they were born in a different place, because of the skin color, because of the beliefs. And I want us to understand and have like a moment to reflect that we are all the same, that we need to be compassionate, that we need to move apart our personal agenda and our egos. And most important, we need to find common ground. We need to understand that there is always something that is bringing and bonding us together. And that is being part of this beautiful world. As we say, we're citizens of the world. So I wanna welcome you. And then again, Happy Universal Day of Human Declaration Days. This is a special day that is not just celebrated here, but every year. And then hopefully today we're starting a tradition that we are coming together, not just as one organization, but different organizations. As this event is showing us, this is the power of working together and partnering. And that's what we need to move forward with, working more in collaboration. Again, welcome to all of you. And then thank you so much for joining us today.
That's awesome. Thank you, Isabel. And you know, as I mentioned, the other partner here is the Southern California Secular Coalition. We have about 30 or so organizations throughout Southern California that have been coming together to find ways to make more of a difference in strength in numbers. And in that group, we've had about 6 of the groups that have participated in the planning on this. And I just wanted the folks who have been part of the planning committee to Jeremy, if we can just spotlight that group. And it's Bev Zarnow from Kahal Am in San Diego, the secular Jewish community. It's Judy Flattery from Humanists of Santa Barbara. It's Red Kuseski and Jeremy Cohen from the Human Association of Orange County. And it's Christine Jones and Tom Bresnahan from Atheists United Los Angeles. And along with Bettina and Joy Adams, who's been with the United Nations Orange County as well. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. But this has been as Bettina said, this has been a really fun thing for us to all come together and work on to have a meaningful event tonight and have some fun as well. So I just wanted to give a little intro to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights for those of you that may not be quite aware of the history of the background of it. I think everybody knows that the United Nations got formed in 1945 after World War II, and it got formed to end all wars and to try to say, look, we need to stop with trying to resolve conflicts militarily, and we have to do it diplomatically. And within a few years of the forming, it was clear that what was needed was an agreed upon set of principles based on human rights. So basically, a commission got put together, led by Eleanor Roosevelt and a number of other world leaders, to come up with the Declaration of Human Rights. And the Universal Declaration is considered groundbreaking for providing a comprehensive and universal set of principles in a secular, apolitical document that explicitly transcends cultures, religions, legal systems, and political ideologies. Its claim to universality has been described as boundlessly idealistic. The Declaration was the first instrument of international law to use the phrase rule of law, thereby establishing the principle that all members of all societies are equally bound by the law, regardless of the jurisdiction or political system. And so in May of 1948, just 3 years after the formation of the United Nations, and we just celebrated our 75th anniversary for the UN on UN Day on October 24th, the committee led by Eleanor Roosevelt and several other key world leaders submitted to the Commission on Human Rights a redrafted text of the International Declaration of Human Rights, and along with the International Covenant of Human Rights, which together would form what's called the International Bill of Rights. And with a vote of 12 in favor, none opposed, and 4 abstaining, the Commission for Human Rights approved the proposed declaration. And Eleanor Roosevelt is credited with having been instrumental in mustering support for the Declaration's adoption, both in her native US and across the world, owing to her ability to appeal to different and often opposing political blocs. And we're very pleased to have Eleanor Roosevelt's grandson, Ford, here tonight, who's going to give us a little bit of insight into what that must have been like to have a grandmother like he had, and also a grandfather, by the way, because it was Franklin Roosevelt that actually formed, under his watch, formed the United Nations. And then sadly passed away right as it was being formed and was taken over by Harry Truman. So with that, I hope that's helpful. And we're going to now have a little short video that does a nice job of sort of laying out what these human rights are all about. Let's listen.
The idea of human rights is that each one of us, no matter who we are or where we are born, is entitled to the same basic rights and freedoms. Human rights are not privileges, and they cannot be granted or revoked. They are inalienable and universal. What exactly are the basic human rights? Who gets to pick them? Who enforces them, and how? The history behind the concept of human rights is a long one. Throughout the centuries and across societies, religions, and cultures, we've struggled with defining notions of rightfulness, justice, and rights. But one of the most modern affirmations of universal human rights emerged from the ruins of World War II with the creation of the United Nations. The treaty that established the UN gives as one of its purposes to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights. And with the same spirit, in 1948, the UN General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This document, written by an international committee, chaired by Eleanor Roosevelt, lays the basis for modern international human rights law. The Declaration is based on the principle that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. It lists 30 articles recognizing, among other things, the principle of non-discrimination and the right to life and liberty. It refers to negative freedoms like freedom from torture or slavery, as well as positive freedoms such as the freedom of movement and residence. It encompasses basic civil and political rights, such as freedom of expression, religion or peaceful assembly, as well as social, economic, and cultural rights, such as the right to education and the right to freely choose one's occupation and be paid and treated fairly. The Declaration takes no sides as to which rights are more important, insisting on their universality, indivisibility, and interdependence. And in the past decades, international human rights law has grown, deepening and expanding our understanding of what human rights are and how to better protect them. So if these principles are so well developed, then why are human rights abused and ignored time and time again? all over the world. The problem in general is that it is not at all easy to universally enforce these rights or to punish transgressors. The UNUDHR itself, despite being highly authoritative and respected, is a declaration, not a hard law. The main bodies within the UN in charge of protecting human rights mostly monitor and investigate violations, but cannot force states to, say, change a policy or compensate a victim. That's why some critics say it's naive to consider human rights a given in a world where state interests wield so much power. Others defend universal human rights laws and point at the positive role they have on setting international standards and helping activists in their campaigns. They also point out that not all international human rights instruments are powerless. For example, the European Convention on Human Rights establishes a court where the 47 member countries and their citizens can bring cases. The court issues binding decisions that each member state must comply with. Human rights law is constantly evolving, as are views and definitions of what the basic human rights should be. And as our lives are increasingly digital, should there be a right to access the internet? A right to digital privacy? What do you think?
All right, awesome. And now we're delighted to have Ford Roosevelt here, and we're going to have Bettina introduce him.
Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this short video. Ford Roosevelt is really a personal friend of mine, but he is more than that, really a champion for our San Diego chapter, as his grandmother has been. And Ford continues that legacy, really, with being such an incredible friend, champion of the Sustainable Development Goals, a champion of really anything human rights related, and himself being a good mensch, a real mensch, if people know what I mean by that. So I promised him not to say too much tonight, as he has a wonderful story to tell. And I think after we hear from him, we all feel some kind of a sense of ownership. And I'm really delighted to have him here tonight with us and speaking to all of you, and from his house here in Southern California. Southern California is just beautiful. Thank you. And Ford, please.
Great, thank you, Bettina. Thank you so much. And again, I echo what you said, which is that we are great friends, and it's been my honor to come to San Diego many times to present the Eleanor Roosevelt Human Rights Award. It means a lot, and it stands the test of time. I wanted to just tell a very brief couple of anecdotes about my grandmother. As you can see behind me, a wonderful portrait that was done of her in 1948, and it hangs here, and the original actually hangs in the National Portrait Gallery, where far more people get to see it. But I want to, the anecdote I want to tell is, and all of what we've heard so far, and how the declaration came into being was really something she'd been working on for so many years. And I must say that in the years that I got to hang out with her and visit with her, she never brought it up. And I know she did, maybe because I was too young, but it wasn't something that it was done already. It was out there in the world, and her work was moving on. And it's important to remember, she said many times she felt this was the most important work of her life, to see the United Nations adopt the Declaration of Human Rights. And she'd been working on it for many years. What comes to mind for me when I think about this document, and I think about her work, and I think about the pin that I'm wearing for sustainability initiatives from the United Nations, I thought this says so much that I had an extra one. And I sent it about a week ago in an effort to give my granddaughter, my 10-year-old granddaughter, Elsa, who lives in Connecticut, I wanted to give her something to hold on to also about what she's discovering now in school. She'll be moving on to middle school next year, and many of the things she'll be learning will have to do with the climate crisis. And so I sent her this pin, and I told her the story of how it came into being, and said something about the Declaration of Human Rights in the United Nations. And she said back to me, I don't know what that is. I don't know what the organization is. I don't know what that company is. And it made me realize there's so much work to be done still with the young children of the world who are going to be so adversely affected by so much that's going on, from the climate crisis to violations of human rights around the world, way beyond anything my grandmother could have ever envisioned, not to mention how we're talking to each other tonight. Never could she have imagined this. But it's really important that I think we find a way in our own lives to own the Declaration. Find an article out of the 30 articles in the Declaration that speak to you and that you can own and go forth and do something about in your day-to-day activities, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's when you do get to go out, whether you're behind a mask or not. Find that one article that says something to you. I can say for me, for many, many years, it's been education. I've been involved in education for many, many years. But I want to just close with something that to echo what I said, which is my grandmother's thinking on this for so many years. Before she became appointed to the United Nations by President Truman, she wrote in her column, My Day, which she'd written for many, many years. She wrote something that I want to read. I found the other day. Somebody sent it to me. And she wrote in February of 1946, so a couple of years before this happened. She wrote, when will our consciences grow so tender that we will act to prevent human misery rather than avenge it? This was something she felt deep in her heart for many years. And when she traveled the world and seen the ravages of war and human misery around her whole life, I think she really brought that to the table with her at the United Nations as she crafted and led the team to put together the declaration. So I'm honored to be here. It's a great honor to know who's on the call and all the people, hopefully that will see this later on. Just find an article, work on this, and let's all stay together to make the United Nations, the UDHR, a live document, something that works for everybody around the world. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Thank you so much for those great words, Ford. That's you couldn't have said it better. And I think that's I think the fact that we've got so many folks on this call speaks to what's in everybody's heart. And I think we're all feeling that there's a need to recommit to this basic understanding of fairness and what's right in our world. So so great to have you join us tonight and share those words with us.
It's always an honor every time I do this, live or on Zoom.
Thanks so much. Okay, well now it's my pleasure to introduce one of our main speakers of the evening, and his name is Vic Schachter, and Vic is the president of what's called the Foundation for the Sustainable Rule of Law Initiatives. We'll make sure that his website is put into the chat for you. And I heard Vic speak about 1.5 years ago, I believe. And to be honest, I was just blown away by what this man has accomplished. I'm not going to take his story. I'll let him tell it to you. But based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Vic has started a nonprofit to basically help so many countries around the world deal with very difficult cases that they could otherwise not deal with. They've done literally hundreds of thousands of cases. It's just an honor to have you here, Vic, and to share your story with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate your very kind remarks. And can you all hear me okay? Yes, okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Yes. I'm seeing also something blocking my picture, but I assume it's clear enough to you, so we can go with that. In fact, let me just make one adjustment that may take, there it is. Okay, good. Thank you so much, not only for your kind introductory remarks, Dave, but for inviting me to speak before the UN Association of Orange County. And now I have a greater appreciation of all the others that you've collaborated with. And as you'll see, collaboration is the heart of the work that we do at the foundation. We cannot accomplish our goals that I'll talk to you about without that collaboration. And I think you'll all understand what I'm saying. The collaboration itself is a privilege in our lives. It's a joy in itself. So congratulations on all your good work and this excellent turnout with respect to this very special celebration. I'm going to take about 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes, I hope, to share with you my observations about our work and the interrelationship, as I'll mention, to human rights, and then try and leave about 5 minutes for questions, however you wish to deal with that. We'll see how the timing goes. And Dave, I'll follow your lead on that as to whether there is time to take any when I'm done. What I want to talk to you about that I think is most relevant to your work is the interrelationship, which is often overseen between human rights and the rule of law. And when I first took a look at the Declaration as a mature adult, to put it kindly, after 50 years of practice, I looked at it again. I was so delighted to read in the preamble of the Declaration of Human Rights that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. I mean, clearly a main pillar and foundation of the DHR and all of the reasons we're involved is an understanding of what human rights is. And I want to define that a little bit more fully with you as we go forward in our discussion tonight. This interrelationship is really supported, expanded, and built upon peaceful dispute resolution through a process that is often called ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, or more specifically, one of the main methods, mediation, that I want to discuss with you. Our mission, if you look at our website, is to create alternative dispute resolution centers to achieve timely, fair, and peaceful conflict resolution in emerging countries with overburdened and backlogged court systems. Rather grandiose goal. And when I first undertook to do this while I was still practicing law as a recovering lawyer, as a litigator, and went into this as a volunteer, and all of us at FSRI, that's the acronym FSRI for our group, are volunteers. None of us, including myself, are paid for this work that we do or our travel. It's a labor of love. It's a labor of mission. And in order to fully appreciate what this mission is about and how it relates to human rights, I want first to kind of define some terms for us so we have a common understanding of three basic concepts. First, I'd like to talk to you about the rule of law. What does it mean? What does it mean to us? And it relates very well to the rule of law that was mentioned in the video. What does it mean in terms of human rights under the Declaration? And what is the difference, really, in very brief terms, between mediation and litigation? Those of you who've been involved in mediation know it well. Those of you who have had a tangential, little involvement, I think it warrants at least a quick definition. So what does the rule of law mean to us when I read this in the preamble of the Declaration of Human Rights? Now, it means four basic things. One, the laws govern all citizens, no matter how high or no matter how low or in between. Everybody is subject to the laws that we agree our country is going to be governed by. Second, every citizen gets equal and fair treatment under the law. Pivotal principle. Third, that we are not governed by the whim of government officials. Rather, fourth, government actions are bound by fixed rules announced beforehand so we can comply with appropriate behavior under that government and as a citizen. And when I take a look from there to the next step, if that is the rule of law, at least as I define it, others that I have gained their thinking of about it, then the next question comes, well, what are human rights? What are those that might actually apply from the UN Declaration? And they're just a handful I want to specifically mention. I'm going to talk about a couple of anecdotal cases that show you the relationship, the intimate relationship, what I call, if you will, the synergy between these human rights and these disputes that come into these mediation centers. For example, the right to life, liberty, and security of person, Article 3. The right to an effective remedy by competent judiciary acting fairly. Key words, competent, fairly. That's in Articles 8 and 10. The right to claim nationality, Article 15. Marry, Article 16. Own property, Article 17. Freedom of thought, conscience, religion, and with that, non-religion, Article 18. The rights to right to an adequate standard of living, Articles 25 and 28. Safe housing and health, Article 25. These are just a few illustrative rights of many others that I think show what rights really interrelate into the resolution of these disputes that I'll describe to you. Now, the last definition I want to burden you with is mediation litigation. What is mediation? Mediation is a non-adversarial process where a skilled neutral facilitates the resolution of these rights and the problems. It's not a rights-based process. It's not who's right or wrong. It's rather going beyond right or wrong, saying, how do we solve this problem voluntarily in a manner that you feel you can move forward with respect to your rights? It requires special skills of active listening, compassion, identification of interest, getting beyond impasse, restoring relationships rather than destroying them, which litigation most often does. Litigation, on the other hand, is adversarial, rights-based, who's right, who's wrong. And as I'll tell you, in many countries that I've worked in, particularly in Eastern Europe and in India and in South America, people want litigation to beat up the other side, to hurt them as much as possible and have them told they're wrong and I'm right. And this is a very different concept from what we are all about, and I think what the UN is trying to do in its implementation of human rights around the world. So, taking these definitions in mind, what's the scope of the problem that we address in our foundation? Very similar to some of those that are addressed by human rights under the Declaration. Backlog dysfunctional court systems. India, 32 million cases backlog. Brazil, with 1/3 of the population of India, 85 million cases backlog. And when I started working in Liberia and then in the Balkans, a similar record of all these backlog cases. So what does this mean, practically speaking? It means that underserved populations, usually the poorer populations, the less influential populations, are denied access to justice and peaceful, timely dispute resolution. So what do the parties do? They resort to self-help, as you would if you were this desperate. You would bribe people, you would extort people, you would hire thugs to collect money that wasn't being paid, and you provided services or goods. You would comply with what corruption requires to get the job done or to protect your family. And you may even go out to get food and commit crimes or steal money to support your loved ones. You may engage in a whole plethora of self-help that constitutes civil disobedience, a disregard for the rule of law, and a distrust of government and democracy. And I would say to you, let's just take a look at what we know is around today. A few examples. Extrajudicial killings in the Philippines. In Venezuela, the complete collapse of the economy and the lack of food and shelter and safe residential living. In India, its history of racial and religious riots. And most recently, we've read in the newspaper just the last several days in Delhi, the farmers blocking access to the city of Delhi and the government buildings because they feel they're being denied their right to implement their farms and provide food and make a living. So I guess the question comes when we look at the scope of this problem, what is the process that we implement at FSRI and that many others in their own very praiseworthy efforts try and accomplish? Well, we focus on building quality, sustainable mediation centers run, this is key, not by us, by the host nations. And it's a 3-phase process. We go, we're invited only by invitation. We don't pick a country. We're invited usually by the Chief Justice or the high court officials of a country to assess, that's the first phase, what works, what doesn't work in that company. And almost every country has something that works de facto, as a matter of fact, or by de jure, some legal process. And then we evaluate it in that assessment. We then write recommendations. And the second phase is then we get their feedback from the host country, what they want to implement, and we go back and we work with them to implement that program by setting up the systems and keeping the data and training the judges, as I'll mention in a moment, and training the mediators. And then thirdly, quality review, periodically going back to these countries to assess the impact of our work and whether or not the centers are providing a high quality, not a head banging, batting somebody on the side of their head to force them into resolution, but truly voluntarily quality experiences to reach resolution. And our focus in doing that is culturally tailoring, going beyond the US way of thinking. What in that culture will work? What is working, what's not working, and how do we modify it so that that systems design will have sustainability, which is a key to what we do. So we view that mediation and ADR are part of the solution in that approach. It provides efficient, peaceful, voluntary, timely resolution. The courts have generally, take some work, welcomed the process, and they take the backlog cases and they refer them to the mediation center. In some cases, it's mandatory. The parties cannot go forward with litigation until they try mediation. And when they come at the direction of a respected judge, over 60 to 70% of these cases get resolved, even where the parties initially oppose the process when it's properly implemented. So it avoids mistrust. It avoids destructive self-help. It emphasizes active listening, compassion, understanding what the real issues are of the parties, and breaking impasse to get to resolution. It reduces the court backlog. The cases are referred by the courts. It promotes a democratic model. And it, in essence, supports the rule of law and the process that comes into play. And if you have questions, of course, about some of the techniques that we use, I'll be happy to answer them because the art of listening, artful listening, or extending compassion in how you convey that to the parties, particularly now online as we continue to do it in these programs virtually. It's an amazing process. Or breaking impasse. I'll give you a couple examples of that in the limited time that I have. The programs that we have run and that are running are plentiful in the United States. We have it both in Northern and Southern California. Our federal courts, we have some excellent programs that have been a model. We have state programs in our various counties, both in Northern and Southern California and throughout the world, throughout the state. And then around the world, the program that I initiated together with some wonderful people, Viola Pali, the daughter of a Supreme Court justice, and then with the Chief Justice of the Court of Karnataka that houses Bangalore, the Bangalore Mediation Center, which has now, since we started working there in 2007, handled over 200,000 cases. And we also got going in Delhi, where when I first went up to the Delhi site that they gave us in 2005, my wife and I moved out there for 2 months. I left my practice, my litigation practice. There were literally hundreds of monkeys running around, defecating all over the place. It was quite a scene, biting people, grabbing food as people were waiting and eating to get before a judge days at a time. And I said to the chief, is this where you want us to start? Couldn't we start in something a little bit more welcoming? And he said, Mr. Victor, they never could pronounce my last name. Mr. Victor, if you can do it here, then they will see you can do it everywhere else in India. And the Chief Justice at that time, was since passed on, was absolutely right. And now there are programs in Chennai and Chandigarh, throughout Delhi, Bangalore, many locations throughout this massive and the largest democracy in the world. South America, we have programs which are operating in Rio, also some in Sao Paulo in the Balkans. I'm proud to share with you that the Sofia Mediation Center in Bulgaria, which we've been very involved in, is now celebrating its 10th anniversary. And we've got programs in Eastern Europe, in Croatia, and in the Republic of Georgia as well too. And in Africa, we started work in Liberia, and there are other programs that are underway in Rwanda and Uganda. So it's been quite a run. So where does that leave us as I kind of conclude some of these remarks? What's the outlook look like? And I would say the future outlook globally is quite promising. That indeed we have found in countries, the key is that where we have countries that have an independent and viable judiciary, which still, although threatened more than ever before, exists in India and still exists in many of the Balkan countries, and definitely still exists in much, but not all of South America, and does not exist in other countries. But if there is an independent judiciary that can take these cases and refer them and support these programs is a very positive outlook. But as we've seen in Hungary, and we've seen now in Poland, and we've seen to some degree in Brazil under Bolsonaro and others, if they continue as these autocrats to undermine the judiciary, then our program and much bigger programs of the UN will fail. So we work very hard to identify the key stakeholders in the judiciary have the courage, and believe you me, they are there to put their reputations and their families at risk to challenge those that would undermine the rule of law. And they are wonderful people to work with. The interrelationship of human resources and mediation is also phenomenal. And I want to give you just two examples to see how these lofty principles of the Declaration of Human Rights apply in the real world. One of the first cases we had in India was a marital dispute. The husband was suing for a divorce. The woman came into the mediation room. I happened to be there. I was coaching the mediators. It was being run by the mediators themselves, which of course are the trained mediators. She had been badly beaten, obviously was very abused, very intimidated. The husband was there, and the brother of the husband also abused the wife. She didn't want the divorce. He was suing for the divorce. He wanted the divorce. He wanted to rid himself of her and get into another relationship. And she didn't want the divorce because if she went, as some of you may know, in an Indian community, back to her community as a divorced woman, her life was over in the rural community, which is still 75% of India is rural. So she didn't want the divorce. And they were fighting with criminal and civil actions. And in 3 sessions of actually it turned out 7 sessions of about 2 hours each. It was a little bit longer. We managed to put that situation in a positive resolution where she got maintenance. She accepted the fact there would be a divorce. We brought the community leaders in. The husband got the divorce. The child custody issues were resolved. That's the beauty of the process. No litigation could have resolved that dispute. I'm going to give you one other, and we're dealing there, of course, with the right to safe living, the right to be free of violence, the right to live with access to food and security. The second example I want to give you very quickly, and these are really, when you meet the human beings that are going through this, I can't describe to you what it's like to walk into one of these rooms. Indians have this amazing capacity to transmit and receive at the same time. They argue loudly and they listen loudly at the same time. It's really quite an experience to see it work. And in this particular case, the grandchildren, 20 years later on, were in a dispute about who owned the property that the grandfather had bequested. And one family wanted to use it for residence. It was a very extensive property. And another family wanted to set up for a business. And they were fighting over the property rights all over the place. And we set up an agreement in which part of the facility would be used for the business, part of the facility would be used for the residents. The resident owner, children, would give money to set up the business, and they would set up the construction and part of the property and some of the parking lots, and they would get some of the profits if the business was successful. This was an incredibly creative solution to family rights, family dispute, to property rights, and a whole host of things that only could be done outside of a court proceeding. And the other benefit is it brought the family together again. It reconciled the family, something that never would have come out of the litigation. So the interrelationship by these two examples of human rights and dispute resolution and rule of law, I think is very, very close and symbiotic. We do run into hostile mindsets in the process of all of this. Oftentimes the lawyers think ADR means awful diminution of revenue, and they oppose us coming in for mediation because they think they're going to lose their cases. So we have to convince the lawyers and train them how you mediate a case in representing a client, how you show that you're not weak because you're recommending mediation. We have to show the judges not to be afraid of letting go of their cases, which even in these multi-million number cases, the judges unbelievably are afraid to let go of the cases because they want to maintain the control for what they think is necessary. And then we deal, of course, with the lawyers themselves who say, when I said, why don't you want to make peace with your enemies? Who say to me when I get interrupted, I don't want to make peace with them. I want to beat them up. I want to retaliate. I want to rip their nails off one finger at a time. So we have the mindset issues that come into play. And we approach all of this by identifying the stakeholders, the lawyers, the judges, litigants. We meet with them. We train them about what mediation really is, how to convince clients to do it, and then how to represent their clients successfully and how they can make money in the process, which is a process that you can imagine takes a little bit more time to explain, but I actually have time right now. But they are receptive to it. It just takes a lot of patience and a lot of work. So my conclusion in all of this is that human rights, rule of law, mediation, and peaceful dispute resolution are intimately related to the preservation of those rights that you are promoting and supporting in a most praiseworthy and admirable way with your work with the UN Association. So I'm delighted to speak to you. If there are a couple of minutes, I don't know, Dave, whether there are, you want to try and take some questions or however you want to handle it, I'm more than happy to welcome. But thank you so much for allowing me to join this really special celebration.
Thank you so much, Vic. Those were, I'll tell you, talk about an example of living our values. I mean, it doesn't get any more real, I think, than the work that you and all the folks that you're working with are doing. So thank you so much for sharing that. We are running just a bit late, a little behind time. So I think what we'd like to do is, if you do have questions for Vic, please put them into the chat. And then Vic, if you're able to stick around for a few minutes after, we'll try to go ahead and have some additional Q&A at that point.
Okay, that sounds fine.
All right. So sounds great. So right now we're happy to have a group called the Voices of Reason perform a song for us that they've done. And I'd like to introduce one of their leaders, Katie, to introduce the song for us.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Katie. I'm the director of Voices of Reason, which I think is a very apt name for our choir here in LA. And it's lovely to see some of our members here as well. Thank you so much for allowing us to show you guys this performance. It's a very special song called We Laugh and We Cry. It's actually a song about how we all realize as secularists and humanists that we only have one life, and we should all just really try and make that count. So enjoy it.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. Yes, we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. We seek an honest answer to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and healthy peace of mind. And then we come together here to talk of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. Yes, we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts we believe in life and in the strength of love. Yes, we have found a need to be together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see, even to question truly is our answer.
That was awesome. Thanks so much. We need to do more with you folks. That's for sure.
Yes, we would
Maybe
love
we could
that.
have a whole concert, you know? Yeah. That would be great. We got some great comments in the chat too on it. So, all right. Well, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Bettina to introduce our next speaker, Carly Dunn. Bettina.
Thank you so much. And I really want to take a brief moment to introduce Carly Dunn, as she is here online today. However, as she's in rural Mexico, her connection is in and out. So she sent us a pre-recording. And as you can imagine, being out in the field, technology is not always your friend. So with that in mind, I really want you to take the next video recording really as something that she would have preferred really to speak to us today in person. However, if there's any question, she is available via the chat later on. And Carly is has been really started with the UNHCR just recently here in San Diego. So she is a great colleague, I want to almost say, or maybe friend even, that we have met earlier this year when we learned that there is a UNHCR, so the UN Refugee Agency, a office here in San Diego. And they're working binationally and have great connections here in San Diego specifically. And we're so proud of this partnership with the UNHCR, and particularly with Carly, who really wears so many hats. And as I mentioned, she would have loved to be here today to speak with you directly via the screen. However, for purposes of ensuring that her message comes across, we have this short video from her for us here that we would like to share. And would you be so kind, Dave, to pull this up, or is that Judy?
Yes, there it is.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Hi, my name is Carly Dunn, and I'm a field associate working for UNHCR in San Diego. In my previous work experience, I worked with the UN Migration Agency and Danish Refugee Council in Iraq, and an organization called Nonviolent Peace Force in South Sudan, as well as other international NGOs focused on peace building and conflict resolution. I have a master's degree in peace and justice studies from the University of San Diego. And being as I've spent most of my life working for human rights, I'm very honored to be here today and share and discuss with all of you. UN Human Rights Day was established in 1950 to commemorate the adoption and proclamation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, by a meeting of the UN General Assembly in Paris on December 10, 1948. UNHCR, the United Nations Refugee Agency, is committed to human rights, which are an inherent part of its mandate of ensuring that refugees, asylum seekers, stateless persons, internally displaced people, and others of concern to the organization have all of their rights respected, protected, and fulfilled. As a rights-based agency, UNHCR's protection activities are aimed at empowering the men, women, boys, and girls of our concern, and also enabling them to once again reclaim and enjoy the human rights to which they are entitled under the UDHR and other related international instruments. The core messages of the UDHR, that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, remains as powerful and relevant today as it was in 1948. Its universality has been demonstrated by the fact that the Declaration has been translated into more than 360 languages. The Declaration clearly places UNHCR's core mandate and work within a human rights framework through its Article 14, which states that everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy asylum from persecution, and Article 15, which says everyone has the right to a nationality. So, how does UNHCR's human rights work translate to the San Diego and Tijuana regions? Starting approximately 2 years ago, UNHCR opened a small office in Tijuana in response to the migrant caravans in the region. Thereafter, we opened a number of other small offices, presences along the northern border of Mexico, including in Mexicali, Ciudad Juarez, and a mobile team in Monterrey, which covers Matamoros and Reynosa. Our offices in the region, in Tijuana and Mexicali, are focused on helping asylum seekers access their rights as outlined in the UDHR Article 14. We support the government of Mexico's efforts to strengthen their national asylum system, which provides protection to people in need of international protection. In addition, we also provide humanitarian assistance to shelters and have also supported public health response during COVID-19 through material assistance and also technical guidance. Here in the US, we're engaged in support to asylum seekers who are currently in Mexico but are being processed in the US immigration systems. For example, we have a partnership with Survivors of Torture International, an independent nonprofit organization dedicated for caring for survivors of torture and their families who live in San Diego County. Together with survivors, UNHCR helps to provide forensic, psychological assessments for asylum seekers who are also survivors of torture in order to help their asylum process in the US. We also partnered closely with shelter organizations along the border, including Jewish Family Services, JFS. JFS operates the Migrant Family Shelter, which receives asylum seekers recently arrived into the US via the land border and provides legal assistance to asylum seekers processing in the US under the MPP program. UNHCR has partnered with JFS to provide limited legal representation to a small number of asylum seekers currently in Mexico, in addition to providing some material support to shelter operations. Aside from these programs in the San Diego and Tijuana area, UNHCR is regularly engaged in advocacy at the local, national, and international level for the rights of asylum seekers and refugees. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carly.
And
That's
just
some
for-
awesome work.
Yeah, just quickly, right, because we heard the birds in the background. She is not in her living room. It is actually out on the balcony, and that's where the sounds is coming from. So just for those of you, she was not rivaling the choir that we heard before. She wasn't, indeed.
It was pretty musical though, right? No, that was awesome. And, just great to see really from the front lines, and, great to hear about so many of these agencies that really, frankly, we often don't hear about, that are out doing all the good work that we need to know more about and be promoting. So thank you again so much for sharing with us.
And then again, if there's any questions, please use the chat, because Kali is here, but as I mentioned, not on the video.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got now a speaker that Bev is Zarno from Kalam in San Diego is going to introduce for us. Take
All
it away,
right.
Bev.
Gerald Wamanayala sees his life as a journey, and you'll soon understand why as he shares his story of exodus from Uganda with the help of the United Nations to San Diego, California, where he settled 13 years ago. Mr. Wamanayala is founder of Echoes of Faith, a nonprofit organization that helps refugees adjust to life in the United States. He is well qualified to manage the cultural and financial integration of African immigrants settling here. He holds degrees in healthcare administration and a master's degree from the University of San Diego in mediation and conflict resolution. He considers his work in San Diego a privilege. The honor is ours in welcoming Gerald Wamanayala to this celebration. And at the end of his talk, we will present a meaningful poem called The New Colossus, which you will recognize as part of the statement on the Statue of Liberty. Gerald?
Yes, Beverly, I want to thank you so much for really giving me an opportunity to share. I'm really humbled, especially after hearing from Carly Dunn of UNHCR and Victor. Mr. Victor actually spoke to me directly because I'm working my way out into the field of mediation and conflict resolution. So Mr. Victor, I want us to be friends because I know that there is so much that you can offer to me. And also, Beverly, I also want you to connect me to Carly Dunn because I also want to volunteer with the UNHCR office in San Diego, because there is so much that the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has done for me right from the time I was in a refugee camp. Like Beverly said, my name is Gerald Wamanyala. I was born and raised in Uganda, a very small country in East Africa, but due to conditions beyond human bearing, I had to leave my country in the year 2004 at a very early age. That traumatizes me the most, because as young as I was, I think I would have actually been given the freedom to live in my country and to benefit from all that my country had to offer. But due to political turmoil, disturbances here and there, my family was insecure. And because of that, I had to leave my beautiful country. I want to believe that God had profound reasons for my departure from my country. So I entered Kenya, which is actually my neighbor on the east of Uganda, in the year 2004. Upon arrival in Kenya, I didn't have any documents that would actually warrant me any work experience in the city. I had to register with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. I am very thankful that UNHCR received me as a young refugee who was industrious, who was so ambitious in life. They acknowledged my plight and they pledged to offer protection, the protection that I so much deserved, because I would not actually get it in my home country, neither would I actually get it from my parents. Now, I lived in Nairobi on a temporary basis before the UNHCR decided to move me to a refugee camp. The refugee camp, sorry about that. So many calls are coming in, people need help, so bear with me. So the refugee camp, I apologize. People are calling, they need help, so bear with me on that. So I moved to a refugee camp, which is Kakuma. It's actually 600 kilometers away from the city, which is Nairobi. Kakuma is situated in northwestern Kenya. It's a desert. Now, being desert does not mean that anybody would ever want to be in that area. The place was so horrible. According to statistics, Kakuma is not suitable for human habitation. But guess what? I didn't have any other revenues that would actually offer me security other than, other than agreeing to move to this refugee camp. So I entered the refugee camp in May of 2004, where I lived under disastrous conditions. I don't want to talk about the life in Kakuma because it gives me bad memories, because in the refugee camp, I lost friends. Many of them died without even bidding farewells to their families. But one thing that I learned when I was in a refugee camp was basically to be very hopeful in life and be very, very optimistic. I had to become very optimistic and become very hopeful in life, because the United Nations High Commissioner had actually pledged to provide security, to provide a sense of protection. And this is something that I was lacking in my home country. So I persevered. I had to be resilient. And one thing that I did was basically to reach out to the youth in the refugee camp, to reach out to refugee kids and help them on so many fronts, ranging from helping them navigate a basic healthcare to helping them with school assignments. Now, the UN, again, besides providing protection and food, as much as the food was not enough to sustain my life, my needs, I had to adopt a system where I would actually feed on a single meal. I'm thankful that in San Diego, I eat more than 2 times. But in the refugee camp, I had to make adjustments here and there to survive on the small rations of food which were granted to us. So again, I didn't give up because UNHCR had offered to provide protection. But again, because I was so ambitious in life, I was not greedy, and I had to reach out and help other kids. And because of that, they opened doors for me to come to the States in December of 2007. Again, after arriving in San Diego, I was helped for a period of 6 months. and then I had to be on my own. That was yet another painful moment because I didn't have parents in this country. Neither did I have somebody that I would call mom or dad. I learned it the hard way. Because I spoke English and a few other languages, I had to establish myself as somebody that others would rely on, because I had come with me the cushion of optimism and also resilience. So I offered myself as a beacon of hope to others, because others who were coming after me did not actually speak any word in English. So I became a translator because I was working for a nonprofit that had brought me to this country. I participated in receiving refugees in this country, helping them navigate the hardest system that I've ever known. I did so much, but I felt that in one way or the other, giving somebody food, giving somebody medical and cash assistance was not the end of the story. After having lived in a refugee camp, I felt that I best understood the needs of refugees, and I was very much positioned to help, given I had my own desk. So I started Echoes of Faith Inc. in the early months of 2017. And the reason I started Echoes of Faith Inc. is after having worked for other nonprofits in San Diego, I felt that nobody was really getting to the bottom of the needs of refugees, other than somebody who had actually lived in a refugee camp, somebody who had indelible marks of sufferance, and somebody who had actually stayed some days and nights on an empty stomach. So ever since my arrival in San Diego, there is so much that I have done for refugees, and I continue doing that because the UNHCR offered a helping hand upon me, sustaining my needs as much as it was not enough because we're so many. I felt that they prepared me, that they gave me all the tools within their disposal and within my disposal that would actually provide me a firm foundation in San Diego. In San Diego, through Echoes of Faith Inc., I help refugees follow up on green cards. During this COVID crisis, I sensitize them on wearing masks, on social distancing and regular hand wash. I help refugees apply for unemployment, especially during this turbulent time. I help their kids pick the best schools that they can go to. And using my knowledge and expertise after attaining my master's in mediation and conflict. Sorry about that. Using my expertise after attaining my master's in mediation and conflict resolution from the University of San Diego, I have again positioned myself as a mediator. So I do local mediations. I help them with negotiations on a very small scale, and I continue to help them on a very daily basis. The biggest need that I realized in 2018 was refugees were in need of employment. So I helped many of them secure employment in Escondido. So I was the only San Diegan who was waking up at 3 a.m. and then put 12 refugees in my 15-passenger van and drive them north to Escondido. I did that for a period of 6 months. I almost ran mad. I almost ran crazy. I felt that empowering refugees was not only driving them up north and picking them any time of the day, but I felt that I needed to do much more than that. So at the beginning of this year, I actually took a course and became a licensed driving school instructor. So right now, on a daily basis, I'm teaching refugees how to drive, which is the hardest thing to do with the refugee, because most of these people do not actually speak English. So I have to work with the DMVs, and they of recent allowed me to be translating for refugees. So let's say today I took 2 clients to the DMV. I translated for them. They were able to earn their permits. And imagine these are single mothers. So given the fact that they have permits, I'm going to teach them behind the wheel because I'm licensed and I have a vehicle with dual controls. At the end of the day, let's say 3 months down the road, these refugees are going to become licensed drivers in California, and they'll be able to be in a position to take care of their needs. So
we should try to probably wrap it in about a minute here, Gerald, if we can.
yes, thank you. So all in all, I think the things that I do is just because UNHCR provided all the avenues that I did not even deserve. And because of that, I also want to extend a helping hand to others and be that canopy that somebody can run to. So I really want to thank you for bringing me on board, and I'm looking forward to speaking with the Encyclopedia of Mediation and Conflict Resolution, Mr. Victor, in the future. Thank you, Beverly, and may you all be blessed.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Not like the brazen
giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs,
straight from land to land.
Here at our sea-washed
Sunset Gate shall stand, a mighty woman with a torch,
whose flame is the imprisoned
lightning,
and her name,
Mother of Exiles.
From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome.
Her mild eyes command.
The air-bridged harbor
that twin cities friend.
Keep ancient lands your storied pomp. Cries
she with silent lips.
Give me you tired, you poor,
your huddled masses
yearning to breathe free.
The wretched refuse of your teeming shore,
send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me.
I lift my lamb
beside the golden door.
Wow, such a powerful poem. I mean, I have a hard time, I don't know about you all, listening to that without tearing up. So that's awesome. And Gerald, thank you so much for your great work that you're doing and for sharing that with us. We appreciate it. And now it's my pleasure to introduce another local human rights advocate who's just taking one particular issue by storm. Her name is Rima Nashashibi. I know Rima from being on the UNA board at Orange County. Rima was also the former vice president of the Democratic Party in Orange County. And she got basically a passion when she found out that most states in the country have legalized child marriage, including California, that needed to end. So she started a nonprofit to make that happen. And we're pleased to have Rima here to talk to us about that and about the amazing progress that she's been making. And also how you can all get involved as well in this advocacy if you'd like to. So Rima, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for UNAOC, UNA San Diego, and the SoCal Coalition, Secular Coalition for convening this event. And I'm glad to see that my friend Barry Simon is here, and he's going to give us the closing statement, who's the division president. Thank you again so much for having me. We know that we heard about the Declaration of Human Rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And we heard that some of the preambles that it's saying, but I want to emphasize a few. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace. And whereas disregard or contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts, while also have outraged the conscience of the people. That's why I started Global Hope 365, the goal of which is to end harmful practices against women and girls, such as child marriage and human trafficking. Did you know that child marriage was legal in the US? I didn't until 2016. And then to my shock, I found out that not only is it legal, it was then legal in 48 states, including California. But since May of this year, we had 2 more states added, and that's Pennsylvania and Minnesota. Even during COVID, they have passed legislation to end child marriage under 18 with no exceptions. So to give you the global pictures, we have approximately 40 million people in modern day slavery, 25 million in forced labor, and 15 million in forced marriage. And what do they say about child marriage? UNICEF, it indicates it's a fundamental violation of human rights. And it's also mentioned in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Child marriage is a violation of Article 16.2. The United States has denounced child marriage as human rights abuse in other countries. And I say, what about our country? What about our kids? How can we police the world if we can't even take care of our own kids? So child marriage is child abuse. The American Medical Association called for an end to child marriage. It is because it's associated with higher rates of STDs, early pregnancies, divorce, intimate partner violence than women who are married at 21. And as I mentioned, it's legal in 46 states, and there has been over 248,000 minors, mainly girls, married to adult men between 2000 and 2015, as young as 12. And there are states, including our own liberal sanctuary state, that have no minimum age to marry. All what you need is parental consent and judge's approval. So all what the kid wants, the children, their parents are supposed to be their protectors, but in this instance, they're the instigators. And so what does child marriage do? It compromises a girl's development by resulting in early pregnancy and often social isolation because it keeps them away from school, from their families, and from their friends. It interrupts their schooling. The case of Sherry Johnson, which woke me up to the fact that child marriage is illegal in the US, and it's an article by Nicholas Kristof. Just like now, he exposed Pornhub, and MasterCard and Visa has dropped Pornhub because of his article that came out just yesterday. So we're thankful to him. So Sherry Johnson was 10 years old. She was repeatedly raped by a deacon and a parishioner in her church. At 11, she got she got pregnant, and child welfare was going to conduct an investigation. So the parents and the church got together and they married her off to the 20-year-old rapist. And by 18, she had 7 kids. She found a friendly attorney who got her a divorce, 7 kids. But what she did is she advocated the legislature in Florida because she didn't want her kids or anyone else's kids going through what she went through. And so they raised the marriage age to 17. They didn't go all the way to 18 in Florida to 17. So it interrupted her schooling. 11, 18, 7 kids, there's no time to go to school. There's no opportunity for a career or vocational advancement. And because of the age differential, it places them at an increased risk of domestic violence and maternal and infant death when they're pregnant at such an early age. In addition, 80% of those marriages end up in divorce. And who at the age of 12 know what their legal rights are and what are the practical resources that we have here? So please, I implore you, and I know Rhett is gonna put those in the chat, join our digital letter writing campaign to elected officials. Help us pass a resolution in your city and county. And to date, we have unanimously passed our resolution, no child marriage under 18, no exceptions in 5 cities, starting with Irvine, Anaheim, Newport Beach, Yorba Linda, and Fullerton just November 17. And it's pending in 15 other cities and counties. So if you have a relationship in your own city council or county supervisors, let us know. You can go to our website, the California Coalition to End Child Marriage, and tell us what city or county you need it for. Also join the California Coalition to End Child Marriage. We made history when we launched it September 14, 2019, last year, when we had our first forum at the UCI School of Law, and right after Assemblywoman Kari Petrie Norris spoke. So we urge you, our ask is for you to call your city, county supervisor, and also call your assembly and senator and tell them you would like them to introduce a no child marriage under 18, no exception legislation. We already authored that bill, and we are talking to a few of our elected officials, and they would like to present it. Now, human trafficking, what do we know about human trafficking? And the United Nations also came up with a paper indicating that child marriage is a form of human trafficking. Human trafficking is what it takes is force, fraud, and coercion, and somebody benefiting from another commercially. So it's $150 billion industry, the third largest and fastest growing crime industry. And please, if you can remember anything, is the national hotline. If you see something you need to call, it's very easy to remember, 888-373-7888, or text Be Free to 233-733. Of course, California is the number one state into calls to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, because we have a large state and because there has been a lot of awareness going on about the difference among law enforcement and the general public about the difference between charging somebody with a crime or realizing that they're victims of human trafficking. Also, the FBI has ranked San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco among the top 13 counties in the nation as far as child trafficking. And there has been a huge uptick in calls to the human trafficking hotline in April of this year because of COVID, 40% nationwide and 30% in San Diego, according to Summer Stefan, the district attorney there. I would like you to watch this video. It's very telling. It's a very short one.
If they park the car outside a school and they see like a group of girls leaving, and they'll see the one girl who's walking by herself, and she looks lonely and she looks alone, and then they'll sort of figure out a way to befriend her.
Middle schools are being targeted by human traffickers. They prey on these young girls, trying to lure them into a life of endless parties and designer items. However, the reality is these girls get addicted to drugs, and most of them don't live past the age of 34.
Did you know one trafficker who has two girls earns about $800,000 cash a year? And that little girl probably has 14 or 15 or 20 men going through her on a daily basis.
According to the experts, the average age of a sex worker is 15 to 16 years old. Roughly 80% of these girls have a history of prior sex abuse. And 90% of these girls are U.S. citizens trafficked in the very communities they were born, which also is a way they are manipulated into staying in the system.
The trafficker will have taken pictures of them. He'll have put her in very compromising situations. And then he'll threaten her and he'll say, I'm going to show this to your family. And you know, your little brother at home, we can threaten him.
In an effort to potentially identify the girls being trafficked and get them help before they get in too deep, educators are teaching their staff to look for 3 classic signs. Does the girl have 2 cell phones? Do they have new luxury items like designer purses and designer shoes? Are they overly sleepy or withdrawn during class?
So there's a lot of warning signs, and you know, this is a 40-minute presentation. So I'm going to skip through those. And there's also warning signs for young adults because traffickers have basically they recruit. It's not like the movie Taken. Most of the victims of human trafficking have come in through grooming, misrepresentation, fraud, coercion, and they're also been trafficked by the people closest to them, like an intimate partner, sometimes parents or siblings. So again, it's not like kidnapping and the movie Taken. I used to do 12 to 15 speaking engagements a month in person. Now I do them virtually. And most of the people think that human trafficking is all these foreign women that are brought into the US. You heard that 90% of the women and girls in sex trafficking are US citizens. So, and it's hidden. It's hidden in plain sight. So we just need to be aware how to read those red flags or their signs, and basically call the hotline 888-3737-888. Now the ask as far as human trafficking is, again, calling your assembly member or senator and the governor and ask them to punish demand. Increase, because it's a demand and supply equation. You need to punish demand. Right now, if you get caught basically paying to get sex and it's a victim of human trafficking, it's a slap on the wrist misdemeanor. It cannot be a misdemeanor. This is a felony. Women are not products. Girls are not products or commodities. They are forced, most of the time they're forced to do this. And so this has to stop. So all women and men need to rise up and say, this has to stop. We need to punish demand. And so it needs to change from a misdemeanor to a felony. And the penalty for a human trafficker needs to go from a felony to a violent felony, because I was told by Sergeant Juan Riveles from the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force, who asked me to include this, is that if you charge them with a felony, they go out, they charge for 10 years, they come out in 5, and they keep doing the same thing. And once they're charged with a felony, then they have to register in the as a child molester, basically. So what have we accomplished in 16 months? We hosted the first Human Trafficking Child Marriage Forum at UCI School of Law. We launched the Coalition to End Child Marriage, the California Coalition to End Child Marriage. We had the first Child Marriage Survivor Summit, July 22nd. And then we hosted a Child Marriage Advocacy Summit where participants called their elected officials. They made appointment. They participated in the digital letter writing campaign. It was awesome. And we also are proud to have the first proclamation in the history of the state from the city of Newport Beach for the No Child Marriage Under 18, No Exception resolution. I've been able to interface with more than 300,000 people with all these presentations that we're doing. And we mailed and emailed over 7,000 postcard and digital letters. So finally, what I would like to end is, please participate in our digital letter writing campaign. Call and meet your elected officials. Email us with the result, volunteer with us, invite us to speak, and hold a fundraiser for us. It doesn't need to be big. It could be 20 of your fans at $25 each. And again, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Global Hope 365. And please use these hashtags. Maybe I've gone too fast, but gender equity, it's the underlying issue of all this, and end human trafficking and child marriage. And the most important thing is children cannot consent. They cannot consent to marriage under the age of 18 because they're forced into it. And most of the time it's done to hide a crime like statutory rape. At the Child Marriage Summit that we had, the Child Survivor Summit, 2 of the 4 were forced to marry by their parents to basically rescue the man from going to jail. One at 13, one at 14, they were both abused by these men. So this is unconscionable. So again, thank you so much for your patience, for listening, and for participating and this great human rights celebration, and let's implement human rights for all, not just for some. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rima, for that just awesome presentation and for all the terrific work that you are doing. And I want to ask Isabel, our president of the UNA OC chapter, to say a few words. She has something for you.
Yeah, Rima, this is something that we are really proud of everything that you're doing. You're just such an example of what is acting locally, thinking globally. So we have here certificate in recognition for all your labor and tireless work. So this is in recognition to Rima Nashashibi, Community Service Acknowledgement, in honor of your distinguished work with Global Hope 365. As a United States Senator from the state of California, I am proud to recognize your exemplary dedication to protecting children from abuse and exploitation around the world. So this is presented from our Senator Dianne Feinstein, and then you will be getting this. But as I mentioned it, I think we're really honored to have you working here in our community. And as you said, this is something that we have here in our background, and then we have it, and we're not aware of this. So then again, thank you so much for doing this, for bringing us together, and then let's all end child marriage. And as you said, human rights is for everyone, not just for a few. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you.
Fantastic. So well deserved. And now we've got the pleasure of having Barry Simon, our president of the UNA Southern California Division, give us a few closing comments, followed by a special candlelight ceremony that we're going to have to honor this event, Human Rights Day. So Barry, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dave, and your whole team really put together a great event today with amazing speakers. Rima, of course, your commitment, your unstoppableness is inspiring. You're fearless, and we can all learn a lot from your ways of being with your commitment to what you're committed to. And keep up the good work and good health. And all the speakers, thank you to Ford Roosevelt and Victor Schachter and Carly Dunn, the beautiful song and poem, and Gerald Womanyala's comments. Hopefully I pronounced that close. And just really an honor for me to be with you today. As Dave mentioned, I'm the president of the UNA USA Southern California Division. You can think of that as sort of the Southern California region, working with our 12 local chapters and college clubs in support of the UN, advocating on behalf of the important work of the UN, a strong UN-US relationship, and certainly the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals. As Bettina said, we live in very challenging, unique times, a pandemic, a rise of authoritarian style leadership in the world, an economy that is enriching some, but leaving so many millions behind and deprived of adequate food, basic sanitation, and affordable quality healthcare. Yet perhaps there can be found a silver lining. With all the chaos in the world, we, our UNA family and friends, you who are with us today, share a commitment to human rights and a world that works for everyone with no one left behind. Perhaps more promising than ever is the fact that while we view our lives, that our view of life is often skewed towards all those areas that don't work, the global attention being paid by governments and businesses today worldwide towards the climate crisis and the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals is incredibly inspiring. I know that were she alive today, Eleanor Roosevelt would be pleased with what she sees possible given your unstoppable commitment. For as Adlai Stevenson famously said of her, she would rather light candles than curse the darkness. President Harry Truman described her as the first lady of the world. She served as the first chairperson of the UN Human Rights Commission in 1946 and worked to convert what were the local League of Nations chapters into what became today's UNA USA. As she said many years ago, the UN is our greatest hope for future peace. Alone, we cannot keep the peace of the world, but in cooperation with others, we have to achieve this much longed for security. Our own land, our own flag cannot be replaced by any other land or any other flag, but you can join with other nations under a joint or common UN flag to accomplish something really good for the world that you cannot accomplish alone. And thus we have her gift, a declaration, in fact, that we celebrate today, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So congratulations to the UNA USA, Orange County and San Diego chapters, to Dave Rice, Isabel Treidel, Bettina Hausman, along with Judy Flaherty and the Southern California Secular Coalition. Thank you for what you're doing, for your commitment, often with little help or support. Keep up your great work. May you all be blessed with a peaceful holiday season and a good and healthy 2021. Thanks for allowing me to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Barry. That's wonderful words of inspiration, and we really appreciate all the support that you give to us. And at this point, we're just going to have Beverly Zarnow from Kahal AM lead us in a candlelight celebration, which is going to be followed then by a song from one of our favorite artists, Scarlett Rabe, as folks who would like to stick around and have a little more Q&A with some of our speakers, please feel welcome to. But for all the rest of you, thank you so much for attending tonight. We hope this has been meaningful, and stay engaged in human rights. Thanks so much.
The darkest time of the year will soon be upon us, the winter solstice on December 21st. And there have been many other periods this year when a sense of darkness was present. But the light of hope still burns strongly in the lives of those we have listened to tonight. It has illuminated their path to address an area where human rights were not fulfilled. Hope has given voice to their call to action and energy to their power to seek solutions. As we light our candles tonight, and I hope you'll do that at this moment, as we light our candles tonight, let this act ignite within our own lives the passion for working to ensure human rights. As we move past the darkness of this time into the light of the coming year, we dedicate ourselves to expressing our love for humanity through our efforts. The power is within all of us to bring justice and happiness to all. And so here is our celebration. Thank you. I'd love to see all these lights in the screen.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bev.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, what a wonderful event. Thank you again to all of our speakers. Thank you to everybody who attended tonight. We really appreciate it. Stay in touch. We're going to have recordings of this. I know there might have been a few that couldn't make it. We'll make sure that they get it. And for those that would like to stick around, we've got some questions that have been in the chat. We're going to have a session of Q&A and more discussion after this wonderful song from Scarlett Rabe called Battle Cry.
They say I'm young and that I'm foolish. Sometimes it's hard to fall in line, to lose and that I'm careless. But all the rules just don't apply. If you're the ocean, I'm Amelia Earhart. If you're the fire, then I'm Joan of Arc. My life is like a work of dare to dream, they call it reckless. They'll tell you where to draw the line. But what you can be is truly endless when all the rules just don't apply. If you're the ocean, I'm Amelia Earhart. If you're the fire, then I'm Joan of Arc. My life is like a work of art, and I'm gonna leave a mark. And I'm not afraid, and I'm not ashamed. No, I'm not the same as the rest, as the rest. Don't need no medal on my chest. I'll fight like hell till nothing's left. And my last words on my last breath will be, I am not afraid. Hear my battle cry. I am not afraid. Hear my battle cry. Louder than fame, cursing my name. I'm not the same as the rest. And I'm not afraid, and I'm not ashamed. No, I'm not the same as the rest. Don't need no medal on my chest. I'll fight like hell till nothing's left. And my last words and my last breath will be, I am not afraid. Hear my battle cry. I am not afraid. Hear my battle cry. Yeah, hear my battle cry. I am not afraid. Hear my battle cry. Not afraid. They say I'm young and that I'm foolish. Sometimes it's hard to fall in line. So much to lose and that I'm careless. But all their rules just don't apply. I hope you'll.
So good. That's so awesome. Thank you, Scarlett. We love your work. Barry, thanks. Thanks again for being here. We have a few questions that have been entered in the chat for any of our speakers that are able to stick around. Let me just see who's here and see if we can get some of the questions here that I've got. Vic, are you still here? Vic had to leave?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you're here. Great.
Okay.
All right. Well, we have a question. Let me ask it, and then if anybody else, wants to clarify or has another question, please do. But then I've got one for Gerald and one for Rima. So let's start. How is the training of mediators in underdeveloped countries adapted to their specific cultural norms?
That's a very good question because it is a real challenge to do that. I think it's really important to understand, I'll give an illustration of this, what those cultural norms are, and to tailor the training so that it's a comfortable and receptive audience that we get. And let me give the prime example that I learned very quickly about in India. There's a much stronger culture of face saving. And to the extent that we in the United States, for example, might challenge in training people about mediation skills more directly or more individually or more personally about their technique and their style, I learned that it was really important to do this on a much more personal basis than to do it, for example, in aggressive clinics or hypotheticals where people have to perform in front of others. And this is no less true with judges, where I've had to train judges on how to make a referral efficiently and effectively. I have what's called a 6-minute referral technique. I learned very quickly you don't do this in a group of judges. In some cases, the meetings I've had with judges be 40, or as large as one case, I have a 200 in one place. So the individual, dealing with these individuals and their needs and their style, together with the cultural reality of how they best learn, assertive teaching, passive teaching, all of that needs to be tailored. And I will just close with saying it's very different in the Balkans. In the Balkans, you pretty much grab people by the shirt collar, shake them up a little bit, bang them up against the wall a few times, and then they start to listen. So while that's, of course, an exaggeration, you need to tailor those styles to really make sure they're culturally acceptable.
And let me just follow up with one quick question that I think you had mentioned last time I heard you, which is how many attorneys have you had working with you now? What has it been, 10, 12, how many years?
Since 2012, so it's
2012, so
we're talking about 8 years now.
how many have you been able to?
Started, 8 years for the foundation, but I started working in 2002 in this work. So the answer is, for the foundation, we have approximately 25 volunteers.
Okay.
In this particular case, and they all, none of them are full-time. Some do more than less, but these are people that take time for their practices. They're mediators who travel with me, who leave very, very profitable practices to come for 10 or 12 days as well, and they volunteer their time.
What a fantastic thing. I mean, that's just so great.
They're really terrific people. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, you bet. Is Gerald still here? I have a question for you, Gerald.
Yeah, sure I am.
Okay, good. Hey, the question, I don't know if you saw it in the chat. Have you helped the LGBTQ refugees? It says from laws. Have you helped them from laws? Is it improving?
Unfortunately not, because I've not actually come across any.
Okay.
But if there had been some, I think I would have loved to help, because I believe that whoever reaches out to me can actually get the help that I'm in position to offer.
Okay. And I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I'm not sure who asked that, but if you're still on with us, if you'd like to have a follow on or clarify anything with that. They might have had to leave. I'm not sure, but okay.
No problem.
Well, thank you. And then for Rima's here. Take it.
Yes.
All right. The question, did you see it? It says, do you work on female genital mutilation that goes with child marriage?
No.
You interview women in jails is another one. And how do you reach out to educators on what to look for?
All, but no, we do not deal with female genital mutilation. There's a lot of organizations who do that. We're focused on ending child marriage and trafficking, so our hands are full. The other question is, no, we do not interview. I don't know if this is for me or not. We do not interview
women in jails. Yeah.
In jail. That question is for me.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Who was asking that? Are you on with us?
Nina.
Oh yeah. Hi.
Yeah. They're the very large Century regional detention facility in LA. And the head of correctional medicine was, last I knew, a woman who was brought in for, some new blood, new thoughts. But that's not a juvenile facility. Those are adults, and a lot of them are sex workers.
Right. We have, for the people in San Diego, you're lucky in a sense that you have a district attorney who is passionate about ending human trafficking. She rolled out human trafficking prevention programs in all the schools, in all public schools in San Diego through a grant, $2 million grant by the UBS Foundation. And unfortunately, human trafficking they did the research, and it's in all schools, high schools and middle schools in San Diego. It is through a partnership between the Three Strands Global Foundation and 2 other entities. We're trying to get that same human trafficking prevention program into the schools in Orange County and LA County. Three Strands Global Foundation is in 48 out of the 58 counties in California, and that doesn't include Orange County and LA County. So we have a meeting with the Orange County Board of Education president coming up this month. We're also fundraising in order to implement these programs in our schools. But until then, what I do is go speak at these high schools, private schools, public schools, and I am speaking at, I also speak at colleges and universities because recruiting is there too, I was told by students. I spoke at UCI and at Chapman, and I spoke to interfaith groups where I was told by a young lady that they are at UCR also, and under the guise of a church group. Same thing at UCI. And so we basically, I have red flags for both parents and teachers, and then for young adults and students. And I go through them all, and I will be presenting and teaching all the staff at a high school in Huntington Beach. I was invited to train all the staff there on the red flags they need to look out for in order to basically detect any possible victims of human trafficking. What we're trying to do at Global Hope 365 is prevent future victims from happening through raising awareness and educating young adults and children about human trafficking and what the pimps and traffickers and perpetrators are doing in order to entice and recruit. They're in chat rooms, they're in game rooms, they're in social media, they're in Facebook, they're on TikTok, they're everywhere trying to recruit more people. And that's why we're telling parents, do not post anything about your kids on social media. Do not, because they thrive about that. And they are right now recruiting them from their own home, the kids, the traffickers.
Yep. It's an amazing problem in our own backyard. And I don't think any of us can believe that just in Orange County alone, we're actually ranked number 3 in the country, in terms of human trafficking. And I know we have a huge task force that's been award-winning and going on, but it seems to be one of those issues that just doesn't get a lot of publicity. And you're right, Rima, it just needs awareness, especially with parents. We have to be more aware of this, as well as pick up on the policy making and the laws. It's ridiculous that the perpetrators here are getting hand slapped when these are slaves, and they're locked in for life often. So it's a horrible thing. But I wanted to see if anybody else had any questions. Just raise your hand. If you've got a question, we'll try to call on you.
I can't raise my hand because I'm my video's blocked.
Okay, go ahead.
But I had wanted to ask Gerald, I think, no?
Yes, yeah, Gerald.
About, but it sounds like he's never had any experience with it, because the laws in Uganda were death penalty and 3 years for any family member that didn't turn them in, and
for LGBTQ,
had a very
it's really tough there.
It was the only one when I was in Tanzania. It was the only one carrying a Department of State warning for LGBT people. About going, just beautiful.
Yes.
People.
Yep. It sounds like, Gerald, what you're saying is, so far in your work here, you just haven't really run into that issue, but I'm sure that that's obviously a big issue at home, right?
Yeah, it is. And it actually affected one of my friends who had to, I went to the same school with this gentleman, and then he happened to be identifying with the other gender. And because of that, his life was at a risk. So they wanted to kill him. He fled Uganda. I offered him some guidance, and good enough, he actually got registered as a refugee in Kenya. And last year, actually 2 years ago, he was able to make it to the States. So right now he's living happily in Salt Lake City, Utah, and he's having a wonderful time there. So it's a big problem. And because of that, because of the threat, because of the notion that the government was gonna go after our brothers, they had to flee. Most of them fled, and they're in different countries in hideouts. So right now, what is actually happening is actually that the political situation is contaminated, and the opposition are being killed left and right.
Okay, we've got just time for one more question. It looks like Amir. Do you have a question, Amir?
Yes, thank you, Dave. My question was actually addressed to Rima. I already typed in the text, but what techniques does the PIMS use to control? I'm sorry, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can now, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Can you hear me now, Rima?
Yes.
Good. What are the techniques the PIMS use to put control on their victims, both the undocumented and citizens? Undocumented, probably they use they take advantage of their legal status here in the States when they smuggle them in. But what mechanism do they use for their victims who are citizens already, other than the ones, the examples that he mentioned? Thank you.
Good question.
Thank you, Amir. 13, I'm just, Orange County, I just wanted a point of clarification. Orange County is not number 3 in the nation as far as human trafficking.
Okay.
San Diego, San Francisco, and LA have been listed by the FBI as one of the top 13 counties in the nation as far as trafficking in children. But to answer Amir's question, sometimes what happens, as you know, there's labor trafficking and also there's sex trafficking. Not all human trafficking is sex trafficking. And sometimes what happens is they bring them legally on a visa here, but as soon as they step ashore, they take their travel documents and all their ideas, and then they basically hold them hostage in either massage parlors or home brothels or whatever the case may be. And that's one way. And same thing with sweatshops and other types of labor trafficking. As far as sex trafficking, as you heard in the video, what happens is that they groom them. As we mentioned, not all of them, a very small percentage are kidnapped like the movie Taken, but mostly they being groomed. They get close to them, they get them to trust them by either affiliating with them against the parents for one reason or another, making them trust them. And sometimes when they talk to them through game rooms and chat rooms, they have a picture of a young person when they're actually older men. And then we get into sexting and sextortion. So what happens is they get them addicted to drugs, they get them addicted to alcohol, they use threats, they take videos of them when they get raped. I was a keynote speaker at the International Association of Insurance Professionals, and after my speech, one of the attendees came to me and she said her niece was trafficked that way. The father and the mother, they're both professionals, a doctor and a lawyer. They're here, and their daughter went to study in Georgia. She was recruited through the classical thing, you're so pretty, we're going to make you a model. And by the way, we have an agent, and she gets raped at the interview. And then they take videos of her as she was getting raped, or she's servicing the men. And then when she wanted to leave, they told her, you know, see these, we're going to show them to your parents. And so that's what they use. And then when she really wanted to leave, they threatened to kill her family. And you also heard in the video that they threatened to kill because they know everything about them when they befriend them and about their family, and then they know where they live. So they start threatening their family members. And we had the chief of police in San Diego at our first summit at UCI Law School, and he said, basically they are groomed and they're trafficked in the same area they live in. The only thing that traffickers do is they keep moving from one area in the other there because they want to disorient them. And second is because they don't want to be captured by law enforcement. And because they get them to trust them so much, and they either make them believe that they are their intimate partner and they care about them and all that. And then the questions start coming in. You know, would you help us make rent? You know, I have a few payments coming up. And that's basically what happens. And the chief of police said that sometimes they have a hard time having the victims basically provide statements that are going to incriminate the traffickers because, you know, the Stockholm syndrome, because they believe that they really love them and they have their best interest at heart. But we want to prevent anyone from, especially kids, women and children, from going through that trauma, because it never leaves them, never, ever leaves them.
Exactly. It's totally right. And, you know, again, we just need the awareness. We need, you know, more of your advocacy and the advocacy of so many other groups I know that are out there that are working in this, in the space of human trafficking. And it's just, you know, it's something that needs to be dealt with. So thank you again, Rima, for all of your work. And again, thank you to everybody for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. Hope it was meaningful. I want to thank all of the folks who participated in the planning of this. We've been at it for a while and wanted to put together a quality program. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thank you again, all, and have a great evening. Good night now.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.